Boom, boom, boom. Recruiting time. Let's talk about it. UCLA's got some recruits. Let's talk about Hit the Trails Tuesday with Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, it's Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, your favorite host. You can follow me at ZachAndYox. Follow the show Twitter at Locked On Bruins. Thanks for making Locked On UCLA your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcasts, Odyssey, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Like, comment, subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube, please. Thank you. Hit that red subscribe button. In the meantime, let's dig right in. UCLA recruiting news. Let's go with, all right, little old faithful. Hit the Trails Tuesday. If you're a little new to the podcast, reviewing it for the first time, we do this little off and on. Hit the Trails Tuesday, depending on the game week, whatever it may be. Hit the Trails Tuesday, diving in on UCLA football recruiting. And while it's interesting, you can go and look at other schools and be like, ooh, look at this guy that they got. Look at this recruit. Look at this guy they're bringing in and going to sprinkle in a $5 million dinner with 20 other recruits. We're looking at you, Arch Manning, and whatever in Texas, or whatever it may be, or whoever, whatever it is. Chip Kelly, it's a little bit different, with the Bruins. It's high school recruits. It's a little bit of a dry season when it comes to the Bruins recruiting under the Chip Kelly philosophy. It's so forth and so on and so forth. But, the offseason will pick up when it comes to the likes of the transfer portal and guys who are either weren't happy at one spot, have graduated and want to move on, or want to utilize either a grad year and or a COVID year. And that's what UCLA seems to have been basing this model on, at least with Chip Kelly recently and for the near future. But still, it does not mean they're stopping with recruiting high school kids. I know we already had the episode of them losing Roderick Robinson II, their top recruit for the class of 23. Well, their recruiting class dipped all the way down to 92 in the country, close to the 100 mark. And yes, there's only 130 plus teams at the FBS level. So it means UCLA's recruiting class is not so good. Reasons for hope? Chip Kelly does his best work in the offseason. Reasons for neglect and sadness? Well, it is what it is. But all this being said, the Bruins getting a 3-star recruit commit, Ethan O'Connor, just a couple of days ago. O'Connor coming out of Los Alamitos just before the weekend prior to the Stanford game. So UCLA getting a class of 2023 Ethan O'Connor athlete commit. He's a hybrid between both a receiver and a DB, a Griffin in Los Alamitos. They've had a good season out in the CIF Southern section. Los Alamitos, a Griffin. There, he's had good years. And while he does have a little bit more experience being a receiver, he comes through UCLA recruiting him as a defensive back. So a bit of a hybrid. Kind of reminds me, I guess, in my mind, of Ish Adams kind of recently. And UCLA and Chip Kelly's coaching staff, they kind of shifted guys one way or the other. They've been a lot of position changes, offense or defense. But here they are getting Ethan O'Connor, who was committed over the weekend prior to another commit, which we'll get to before the UCLA Stanford game. Hybrid between both, had 13 other offers from other schools in Division I, FBS and FCS, the likes of Alabama, USC, Texas A&M, Penn State, just to name a few. But he says, no, he's going to stay local to SoCal from his high school days. And despite making his first official visit way back in May, went to go visit the likes of Washington, Colorado, hasn't officially visited USC. Through all those different schools, O'Connor comes and decides he's going to UCLA. Well, the 3-star recruit was able to bump up the UCLA overall ranking from 92 to 86. So just him alone committing was able to watch UCLA jump up 6 spots in overall recruiting amongst the country, even though UCLA still at that point was slotted at number 10 in the Pac-12 with his committal. But Their defensive backs coach, Brian Norwood, says, all right, with his recruitment, he is coming in as a defensive back, despite being a guy that's listed as an athlete, basically a guy who's a utility player. If you're a baseball fan, he can play multiple positions, but they're expecting him to play the defensive side of the ball because, UCLA, what do the Bruins need help with? Chip Kelly's bread and butter is figuring out how to get the offense to work. Well, it's stopping the opposing team's offense. So you can see with these recruitments, they are hitting defense hard. I believe 9 recruits so far for the Bruins, and a lot of them, I believe 4 of them, are all coming in recently from the linebacking core. While it is Ethan O'Connor, who is a defensive back that they're getting in, 6'1", 170 pounds from Los Alamitos. And he helps jump their class of 23 rankings again, 6 spots. And, you got to think UCLA's defensive backs room, they're going to lose at least 3 seniors and another redshirt senior or redshirt junior who could leave, Mo Osling, I believe, or I might be saying the wrong thing. But UCLA, they've got a certain amount of DBs in their locker room that are going to be graduating and won't be coming back. So there's going to be quite a lot of opening spots in the secondary for the UCLA defense that they really have to fix up holes wise going forward and really instill a different type of defense. And with UCLA, it's, you got different types of things trying to fix things defensively. And while it's not Mo Osling the third I was referencing, I meant Kenny Churchwell the third. Different types of third year. He's the redshirt junior, 5th year from Rancho Cucamonga, from Oregon transfer, modern day high school product in Kenny Churchwell III. He's a guy that could leave. He's been in the program 5 years, so there's certainly some holes to be filled in the defensive backs room. And while I'm not saying O'Connor will be coming in and immediately thrust into action, really bolstering and bulking up in the secondary and the recruiting trail, especially whether you're grabbing guys from the transfer portal. UCLA just grabbed Azizi Hearn recently from Wyoming as a grad transfer, now getting a high school kid with O'Connor. It's important for UCLA to bolster that defensive side of the football. As you can see, they continue to grab guys, and they need to bolster the defense because what came down to the biggest downfall for the team in their biggest game of the season? They could not get a stop to save their life. And it's nice to see they're getting recruits and still building up after a heartbreak seeing Roderick Robinson flip to Georgia not too long ago, earlier in the month of October. But UCLA says, all right, we're hitting the ground running, we're going, and they're going after defense, at least with a few of these recruits that they're talking about. And while we'll continue on talking about the likes of recruits, let's talk about Nissan and how, Nissan with the thrilling moments. This week's thrilling moment in college football is brought to you by Nissan. The thrilling designs behind the new lineup from Nissan is intended to empower drivers in vehicles as capable as the driver themselves. And when I think about unbelievable abilities on the field for this week's thrilling moment, it has to be Zach Charbonnet. Just time and time again, this man has been an absolute wrecking force for the Bruins offensively. When you're averaging about 10 yards a pop for UCLA on the ground, well, Charbonnet just continues to go after it. Another shout out to Leatu Latu, get an offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball. Latu, number 2 in the nation when it comes to sacks, about 7.5 this season. So you got Leatu Latu, a force defensively coming out of medical retirement. And then you have Zach Charbonnet, those two coming together to be one force defensively, one force offensively. Boom, coming together as the Bruins have found themselves 2 absolute studs in the transfer portal out of Power 5 schools and bringing them, as we talk about recruiting, big guys in the recruiting game that helped Chip Kelly's team for this season. Those are the guys who were part of the thrilling moments. Leatu Latu, one of 4 sacks of the Stanford offensive of the quarterback in Tanner McKee. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at nissanusa.com. So as we continue to wander on about thrilling new designs, which is recruiting, which is what we're talking about, already announced O'Connor over the weekend, and then a recruiting boom, boom, boom. Ethan Young always likes to give that boom, let the athletes commit themselves, personally, publicly come out and say, I am committed to, and this time it was Simone Malafu out of Hawaii, who is a 3-star linebacker that decided to go to UCLA. This is a guy who comes through, is a 6'1", 225-pound linebacker with Ken Norton Jr. bulking up the linebacking crew, as I've already mentioned here, Locked On UCLA for this episode. Ken Norton Jr., UCLA, the recruiting side, they're bulking up the defense. They started with O'Connor, a hybrid athlete. He comes in as a defensive back. You have Malafu, who comes in joining the Bruins with a lot of linebackers for UCLA. 4 of the 9 class of 23 commits are linebacker commits. So you have the DB. You have all these guys that the Bruins are trying with the likes of Ty Lee. You have Donovan Palat. You have all these guys who are coming in that are trying to shore up the defensive side of the football. And while not every recruit is going to pan out, especially from the high school level, or not every recruit is going to make an impact in their true freshman year, even maybe second year, even though we have years and guys who leave, transfer portal, whatever it may be, NIL is all important these days. But for UCLA, they are stacking up, trying to, with the defense. And it was important to note that while they lost their top recruit, it was a running back. And UCLA is going to have to replace Zach Charbonnet at some point with his lethal ability to change the game for the Bruins rushing attack, just by how dominant he has been with the very solid offensive line this year at times for the Bruins. But a lot of the focus on the defense. Malafu, who comes in big body with him and O'Connor. I said UCLA's national ranking in the country had been 92. Well, with the Malafu commitment during the Stanford game in the middle of the beatdown of the Cardinal, so a 1-2 punch, win and a recruit commit, UCLA jumped to number 72 in the country. So just from the little bounce up from O'Connor and the Malafu, those two coming together as spectacular combinations help build this UCLA recruiting class that is nowhere near far from over with what Chip Kelly and the Bruins like to do in the transfer portal in the offseason. So it's nice to see UCLA building back that recruiting ranking so far, kind of keeping with guys. And while the Bruins have not tried to build themselves solely on 5 or 4-star recruits, Malafu is certainly amongst the 2 or 3 top recruits that the UCLA Bruins have now of guys committed for the class of 23. It helps with Malafu, who's going to go play in the Polynesian Bowl. He had been, all right, saying, he made his decision. Say, let's go. He's got a cousin with the defensive lineman, Sitiveni Havili Kalfusi, who will be a redshirt senior next year, a guy who is he's a cousin with. He's going to be in the Polynesian Bowl, is Malafu. So UCLA is hitting the ground running, strictly going to the defense. So it is nice that the Bruins are trying to they're trying. As much as Chip Kelly was getting so much flack for saying, what's up with his recruiting? His philosophy with comments in the offseason about NIL, different things, recruiting, wanting to go after guys who want to be there, not really being as much to the fan base. Well, here's their clear philosophy. The Bruins are going after defense and wanting to build for the future. And for people who are shocked that Kelly got that extension, doesn't, as some people may say, isn't going to be building for the future of the Big Ten. Well, here they are building for defense, hitting for the linebackers, and these are the guys that are going to be there not only just for the last year of the Pac-12, but going to be there for the start of the Big Ten, hitting the ground running. What do you need? Linebackers, DBs who can hit and be ready with the secondary, with the big offenses like Ohio State's been proving in recent years, but also the linebacking core and shoring up the front 7, because what do these Big Ten teams tend to have? Big, beefy offensive lines. They can run the ball, and you need guys who can come, rally to the football, stop the run, stop the pass when you get to a very physical, grounded out type of game, getting to the Big Ten. So it is nice to see UCLA jump so vastly in the recruiting rankings, which, they're all for fun and for show until we strap them up and we get on the field and we see who is the best coach team, who are the best players, who can extend their career, who have a good college career, whatever it may be. It is nice to see that UCLA is continuing to build, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And while I don't think we should sweat it out that Chip Kelly is going to get this team ready for the future, as well as for the rest of this dream start to the 2022 season for the 7-1, 10th ranked UCLA Bruins. It doesn't mean we can stop sweating about it, about, big games like SC in the future or the basketball season starting up soon. We'll get to basketball recruiting in a moment as we talk about some top 5 recruits Mick Cronin's trying to nab. But we shouldn't sweat about it because you've had embarrassing sweat. I've got siblings who got embarrassing sweat or, underarm odor. There's no need because it can be fixed with SweatBlock. We don't need to sweat and deal with embarrassing odor when watching UCLA games. SweatBlock has wipes that can help fix your problem. They're a must-have, the SweatBlock wipes for everyone's toiletry bag. I know, you bring your toiletry bag on the road. I go on the road for plenty of broadcasts during the fall season, winter, whatever it may be. Making sure I don't stink when I broadcast is a must. So, a SweatBlock wipe, that's helpful, whether it's a big presentation or like me, a broadcast, being in the press box. Oof, don't want my broadcast partners to think I'm stinky. Even a hot date can benefit from us, whoever's using SweatBlock, either you, me. We don't want to be stinky. We can all benefit with a SweatBlock wipe. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try SweatBlock. Save 20% with the promo code Locked On at SweatBlock.com. Again, that's the promo code Locked On to save 20% with the promo code Locked On. All right, here we go. No need to be stinky anymore. UCLA ready to rock and roll talking about basketball. And while tip-off is November 7th, with exhibition coming up against Concordia and still basketball getting us all excited, why can't we also talk about in this Hit the Trails Tuesday, UCLA basketball? We've already discussed throughout the relaunching of this podcast Ivo Samovic and how he can help peel UCLA's recruiting abilities overseas, while already Mick Cronin showing he can dive into someone's backyard, pluck that state or that local community's top recruit in that area, and bring him to UCLA with getting Brandon Williams, watching him being in a quote-unquote recruiting war for Devin Williams, another lanky 6.5 foot, 6'6", whatever it may be, recruit, 4-star recruit, Devin Williams, who recruited a long time ago, choosing UCLA over UCLA. We've discussed those as well. But here's some guys who are some targets for the Bruins going forward. You have Isaiah Collier and then Ron Holland. Ron Holland is the one that will really be the focal point. But for the Bruins, we'll start off with 2 backcourt options. You have Isaiah Collier, who is a top 5 point guard in the class of 23, does have UCLA in his top 4, but between the likes of USC, Cincinnati, Michigan, it seems like most reports are coming out from different sites, whether it be 247 Sports, On3, different outlets coming out saying that with Collier, who's already announced that his recruiting commitment will be publicly announced on November 16th, coming up pretty shortly in 2 weeks, it's not likely that the Bruins can get that top recruit with Isaiah Collier. Those are the two guards left that UCLA has offered of the 9 that have not committed yet. And it's not looking like Collier will go, the Georgia kid, go to UCLA. It's seeming likely that they'll lose this one out actually to USC or between Cincinnati or Michigan, but it seems likely they'll lose them out to Cincinnati. USC. El Marco. But so far, UCLA's got a lot of big bodies, and with Tiger Campbell going into his 5th year, you have Tiger Campbell, who's going to sit there, has another year of eligibility if the Bruins just want to go big and run with Tiger Campbell for another year. Who knows if he wants to come back for one more season? It's not seeming likely, but he does have the extra year. Technically, Jaquez does too, all with this COVID extra year. It doesn't seem that's the way they're running. It seems like this is their one last ride for Jaime Jaquez Jr. and Tiger Campbell, which leads UCLA to try and find a guard to build themselves going forward. And while they do have some big bodies going through and trying to figure things out, here the Bruins are looking for another recruit, which leads to UCLA to get a 5-star, potentially 6'8" power forward recruit who just recently released his top 3, including UCLA, Arkansas, and Texas. So Ron Howard is a 6'8" recruit out of Duncanville, Texas. And he is just taken off going pro and going to the G League. He says, nah, that's not for me. Had Kentucky on that list. Says, no, Kentucky's not where he wants to go. Doesn't want to go to Lexington. And leaves it to Arkansas and Texas. So while there is a need for UCLA trying to figure things out at guard, we'll see what happens. We'll kind of update that as it goes. But a 6'8 power forward, mind you, they've already got Brandon Williams, Devin Williams, guys who are bigger bodies who can, do things that they get skinny, big, they're small forwards, hybrid guards, whatever it may be. But it is Ron Howard, who is a 5-star power forward, part of the FIBA U19 USA World Cup team. He was Max Prep's National Junior Player of the Year during the 2021-2022 high school season, part of a Duncanville high school team that went 35-1 and was the Max Prep's national champion in the mythical national championship breaks of boys basketball in high school. A team that was 35-1, dominant, beat McKinney in the 6A Texas State Championship. Ron Howard, certainly within the grasp of UCLA. But what makes this recruitment for the Bruins so interesting is because actually you have to go, if you've heard Duncanville in the news, recently Halloween, well, their spooky season got spookier going even into November because not just the boys and girls teams both put on sanctions. I didn't even know you could get a coach sanctioned, probation, and suspended for the year. Both the boys and girls head basketball coaches at Duncanville High, where Ron Holland is from in Texas, are suspended. And while the girls basketball coach isn't really as meaningful to this, it was just funny that both were suspended for a year and put on 3 years probation on the same day, coming on Monday in earlier reports. And what's important about the boys' side of things for Holland, his 2022 state championship was actually cut, stripped, and given to McKinney because after all these transfer rules and transfer eligibility requirements, we're seeing a lot of this come to fruition in SoCal high school sports in the southern section, and whether the transfer rules are a thing or not a thing, or whatever section you kind of watch in California, it's becoming a real issue in the CIF southern section about who's eligible and who's not, what's a motivated transfer. And, well, for Ron Holland, he's got to play a year without his head coach, who is suspended, and his technically third straight high school state championship in Texas. He's been a part of all three, one in a row in Duncanville, was stripped and given to McKinney via way of forfeit because an ineligible player named Anthony Black was the forefront of it all. And what does Anthony Black have to do with this? Well, Black, one, was the number one point guard in the country, recruited and went to Arkansas, which is one of the three schools that Ron Holland has left in his top three. And Black, well, it went back and forth. There's a ruling that he was eligible. He was ineligible initially, got a court order that says he was eligible. And then because his mom was actually dating the coach and eventually got engaged, everybody was debating whether his transfer is athletically motivated or not. Black decides to go to Arkansas and goes to school. So he was a top recruit, was the second leading scorer on a 2022 championship winning team in the state of Texas before it got stripped on Halloween, and just under rebounding totals, scoring totals of Ron Holland. And mind you, Anthony Black is a 6'7" point guard. So he's a freshman currently under Eric Musselman in Arkansas in the SEC. So if Holland wants to reconnect with his high school teammate, he could do that, which has put the Bruins on the wrong side of things. In addition to already guys who the Bruins have gotten similar body builds and size, but it's different to get a 5-star recruit. He could stay home and stay in Texas, which is one of his two, but if he really lets this drama of his high school season get to him and says, all right, maybe he doesn't want to go play with Black, maybe he wants to leave Texas after all this drama unfolding here right before his high school basketball season of his senior year is about to start, well, maybe Mick Cronin and UCLA certainly have an outside chance with Ron Holland, who is a guy that's had various offers all throughout a top three. And, well, UCLA, this is a guy that they would love to have. 6'8" again, had about 15 points per game, a guy who in the FIBA U16 Americas Championship way back when was averaging 19 points per game, 10 rebounds, a very efficient player, back and forth. And for UCLA, this is a guy that, he's one of the top uncommitted players in his class. So UCLA, Mick Cronin would love to get a guy with a top recruiting class, one of the better ones so far. A couple of 4-star commits in the class of 23 to the Bruins. You have Devin and Brandon Williams. Second best recruiting class so far in the Pac-12 on the basketball side of things. Close to being on the top 25 recruiting class in the nation. But, if you can get Ron Holland, can get Collier, and maybe steal him at the last moment, they're looking for that point guard, that true guard that you would love. You already have 2 4-star power forwards, which might put UCLA on the wrong side of things, but a 5-star 6'8 power forward ain't going to hurt from Texas, being one of the best highly rated guys in his position. It is what it is. So UCLA in contention to get a guy like Holland already, despite having 2 power forwards in Brandon Williams and Devin Williams. But couldn't hurt with Holland, but the Bruins definitely need a point guard to really fill the role of Tiger Campbell. And with Amari Bailey, who is, many are projecting to be one and done, Mick Cronin already lauding over his freshman. Can the Bruins steal another recruit from his home state and pull him away? Again, Ron Holland, it's going to come down to if he wants to play with his former high school teammate just for a season, only 13 games with Anthony Black, but they were state champions before it got stripped. Stay at home in Texas, or if he wants to get away from it all and join what seems to be a trio of towers with 2 other already committed power forwards for UCLA and really give Mick Cronin a very big team for his class of 23. We won't know. He just only announced his top 3 recently over the weekends. And then after the weekend where he announced his top 3, that's when the news came out with the Duncanville High School where he plays having the boys basketball championship stripped away. And we'll see how that materializes throughout the season, if that affects his recruiting or if he's focused on just the season and figuring out the rest of his college recruiting. Who knows? But it's a wild Hit the Trails Tuesday for this one today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. In the meantime, go make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. It's got their take of the day. They got the biggest stories of the day. It's free wherever you get your podcast. You can go watch it, listen today. In the meantime, thanks for making Locked On UCLA your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcasts. And go to YouTube, like, comment, and hit that subscribe button. Once again, thanks for all your support. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Thank you very much. Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. We're going to say goodbye, but not before we say, all right, no way to get rid of spooky season than a jolly cheer into holiday season. Was that cheesy? Yes, we're very cheesy. Let's get those hands up for a UCLA 8 clap as we end the show. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. Let's go. Yeah, let's go. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.